December 9th, meeting of the Metropolitan Housing Trust Fund Commission. I appreciate everyone making the trip to an alternate location today. Welcome to Inglewood, for those of you who don't get here very often. We're excited to be here. We appreciate the library being able to open up their facilities. Encourage everyone to check out a book on your way out. Also appreciate Metro ITS working with us to get this recorded for those who can't be here in person. So I appreciate everyone's flexibility, and we'll go ahead and move forward with a few agenda items. When we first read in that pursuant to the provisions of 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, please take notice that decisions of the Metropolitan Housing Trust Fund Commission may be appealed to the Chancery Court of Davidson County for review under a common law writ of certiorari. Any appeal must be filed within 60 days after entry of a final decision by the board. Any person or other entity considering an appeal should consult with an attorney to ensure that time and procedural requirements are met. I'll also add that, as James mentioned earlier, if you would like to speak at public comment, the sign-up sheets are in the back as you walked in. Also, we asked everyone, regardless of whether you intend to speak, go ahead and sign up to make sure that we have a record of your attendance, and more importantly, when we send out communication regarding any information around the Barnes Fund or any of the grant cycles, that we have a good email contact for you. A couple other things to read in that as you look over the agenda, we do have a public comment period at the beginning of our agenda, as we always do. From time to time, we do also try to have an additional public comment period at the end. We are going to not hold that one today. There will be a presentation of what are the proposed grant policies and scoring matrices, but we are, staff especially, providing a lot of time for the review of those documents, then to get some comments on those that will be held, and we'll be announcing those at the end of the calendar, but those will be in January. So those will be where we really want to have opportunity for your feedback at that point in time. And so the things that we'll be going through today, we do want you to review them. They'll be posted, and our hope is that you will have then ample time to work with staff to provide your feedback, and then when we come back in January, that's when we're making a lot of those final determinations. So the public comment period is going to be open at the beginning of this meeting, and then at the next commission meeting, we'll have another public comment period as well. And so we feel that over the next 40 or so days, there'll be, we hope, ample time to solicit all the feedback that you may have. So with that, the next item to mention is that our commission is moving forward with one fewer commissioner. Commissioner Maria Jackson, that many of you have seen up here over the years, she's been a good asset for us, but she has resigned from our commission. And I'll turn over to Director Hubbard for any further comment on next steps.
Thank you, Chair. Our understanding is Commissioner Jackson was a mayoral appointee. I believe the clerk's office and the mayor's office are reviewing the code that was updated since she was appointed to make sure that we don't have any outstanding appointments to make by other bodies before that position is nominated. So council has a two-part process. There's a nomination, and then there is an appearance before the Rules and Confirmations Committee, and then there is an approval. Is that right, council member? So we're probably looking sometime into the month of February before we have a new commissioner on board.
Thank you for that, Director Hubbard. Is there any way to scoot another chair up to the...
James, can you put it at the end?
Oh, yeah, that one's booby-trapped. All right, thanks, Andy. All right. Thank you for everyone's patience as we get adjusted to our location for today. Our next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. There are two separate approvals we need to make. The first of these we'll take up is the minutes from our meeting on October the 23rd. This has been provided in your packets. You should have had time to review these. Were there any additions or edits to be made any commissioner saw? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve? We have a motion by Jayla. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Antone. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Next up is the minutes from the November 18th work session. These were also provided in your packet. Hopefully you had an opportunity to review these. Were there any additions or edits from the commission? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
So move.
We have a motion by Antone. Is there a second?
Second.
A second from Lizzie. All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Ayes have it. Both of our minutes are now approved. Now we'll move into the public comment section. Who has the list? Director Hubbard?
We have two folks that have signed up, Lucille Houseworth with Habitat and Eddie Latimer for Affordable Housing Resources. If both would make your way here, I'll get out of this seat and let you sit in the hot seat for a minute. Or sit in James's. There you go.
Great, thank you. My name is Lucille Houseworth. I work at Habitat for Humanity of Greater Nashville. And before I left the office today to come here, I looked up statistics related to houses for sale in Davidson County, Tennessee. There are over 4,000 houses on the market. Of those 4,000 houses, 204 of them are less than $250,000 as a sales price, and that includes condos, townhouses, and single-family homes. Compare that to 755 of those that are listed at over $1 million. And I point this out because I just want to say thank you to this commission, to the planning department staff, and to others that are working on this critical need for this community. Having lived here a long time and seen the problem get worse and worse and worse, it is overwhelming need, and I think that speaks to the passion that all of us here have for ensuring there's sufficient funding and that it is as properly allocated as possible given the incredible overwhelming needs. So thank you for what you do, and thanks for having us here today.
Thank you, Lucille. We appreciate that. Eddie?
I have a question, basically, but I do want to say something to what Lucy just said, is that we're getting ready to, in March, we're going to put on the market 44 one-bedroom condos at the corner of Trinity and Elmington, right there by the water towers, and this would not be there without the Barnes Fund. The only reason it's there is because of the grant, which enabled us to build them affordably. So we're very, very grateful for the work y'all do in creating opportunities. We're going to target EMTs, teachers, and police force specifically. If you have a little button, we'll give it to them that says, I bought my home because of the Barnes Fund, and they could wear it around to work or something. Okay, I have a question on the agenda. It's item number 6, items to vote, and down at the very last item is B, draft policies. And it's just an understanding question. You've got rental and cooperative projects, home ownership projects, and owner-occupied rehab. Now, for the last year, there's been confusion on what is and is not home ownership. And so you've basically, cooperative is floated between them, but does this mean that the Barnes Fund is now saying that cooperative housing is a rental option and not a home ownership option, since it's published that way?
Okay.
Okay,
So,
that's great, thank you.
sure. Thank you for the question. I believe that concludes our public comment period. Having seen no other No indication others have signed up for that. We'll move on to the next item, which is our financial update. We have an October 2025 budget to actual. I'll turn it over to Director Hubbard.
Yes, so as you can see in your materials and on the screen, we had expended $255,515 this past month, ending October 31. Just reminding everyone, the big, especially the commission that has the larger sheet, the $15 million that came in September was from the journal correction or the rejournaling in the ledger at Metro Finance of some of the art money that was carried in a separate fund. They've moved into the Barnes Fund account for all intents and purposes. So all of the funds that have ever been allocated to Barnes, whether through ARP or the operating budget, are now carried here. So this is in line a lot. We do expect a great increase coming after November 31 and December because of some changes to Metro's payment processing system that we're working through. Catherine's been hard at work on a lot of draws, and so we look forward to reporting that. But again, most of the expenditures have been through the obligated contracts. We had one recorded deed of restrictive covenant for a closed project, and then you can see by the increase of the amount for our project management, that is the group we do the third-party inspections with, how many inspections have really been done over the past month. Lots of things moving.
Thank you, Angie. Are there any comments or questions about the budget to actual report? All right, we'll move on to the next item. This is our items for vote. There's a handful of these. The first of these is a grant contract amendment. This is from Urban Housing Solutions, something from round 9. This is a revised draw schedule. And I'll pass over to staff for a brief overview of this.
Yes, this was one of the re-grant contracts that the commission approved back, I think, in the spring or the summer. It was approved by council to re-grant the balance of the contract that was remaining after it expired. The grantee has asked for a change in the draw schedule. The original draw schedule was created more aligned with new construction, which has a different kind of set of milestones. This is rehab of occupied rental units, and so they're doing careful relocation, and so they're doing the rehabilitation in phases. So they're looking to adjust the draw schedule more in a phased approach by number of units completed, rather than a vertical new construction project, which looks a little different in a draw schedule.
Thank you for that explanation. Any questions from the commission? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to approve? We have a motion to approve. Thank you, Councilor. Is there a second? A second. Second from Jayla. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. The next item is the draft application manual for public comment. For commissioners, this is an item you have in your packets that looks like this. Hopefully everyone found it. And I'll pass over to staff to walk us through what we were looking at, and hopefully everyone had a chance to get it somewhat familiarized with it beforehand.
All right, thank you. This is something brand new that we've not done before. So we don't do procurements, but we competitively award funds. But any other public agency that does a competitive process has a policies and procedures manual that is essentially agnostic to the content of a funding application, like what the priorities are, how much money is going out. It's just these are the steps that we need to go through, or you need to go through if you want to apply for funds. This is intended to live on our website. We often are asked, how do we apply for Barnes Fund? And these policies largely have been built into a grant policy that is pulled down after we've awarded funds. We don't have things that stay on our website that we can say, hey, read this, find out that. So this purpose, and I don't have a screen in front of me, so I'm going to look over the commissioner's shoulders, sorry, is to establish those policies and procedures for the grant application process, award recommendations. And again, this lays out how everything from how staff will bring the recommendations to the commission, how they will consider the recommendations and vote, as well as general information on the contracting process. It's intended to provide fair and equitable treatment of all the organizations applying for Barnes funds. So again, if you've never been through the process, you don't understand what a funding round application looks like, this will live completely on our website, but from funding round to funding round. It also ensures that transparency around the award of funds, so there's no question of how the evaluation process is handled, how decisions are made, and this would apply to any award of funds that is administered by the Housing Trust Fund Commission, because I know sometimes we're periodically asked to just give any leftover or deobligated funds to an organization, but there does need to be some policies and procedures around how that's handled. There's, I was thinking today, one piece missing to be updated is the process for how to update these and when, and what the commission approval role is. So next slide, Catherine. So this just, if you can read it, lays out the table of contents that is in the draft recommendation or the draft manual. I'm going to highlight most applicants are familiar with everything. I am going to look at the code of conduct, which is new. This is around both the conflict of interest and expectations of persons serving on the evaluation committee. But something that's new in both this draft manual and that is in the grant policies is a prohibition on communication, which means that when we open a funding round, applicants cannot speak to a commissioner, to housing division staff, to anyone with a potential role in the award or review, any evaluation committee member outside of the question period that we've established in a grant policy. That does happen time to time, and we have to remind applicants that there is a period of time, and we want to make sure this is very clear on what communications are not allowed once we open a grant policy. The other thing that is new that hasn't been articulated but has been in the law is a public records policy. Every application is subject to an open records request, and we just want to make sure that that is known to applicants and those records are available for a records request after the council has approved the contracts. So after that point, if anyone has made or is interested in a records request, they have to follow Metro's public records request policy, but we do want to make sure applicants are aware that their applications and everything submitted with it are subject to the records request. So those are some things to highlight. Next slide, Catherine. So we're not going to host special meetings on this, but we are taking comments. We're looking for the applicant community as well as the commission, if there are any policies or procedures that are vague or confusing or are contradictory. You can email us your comments at barnesfund@nashville.gov, subject application manual comments. We're going to have this open. Actually, that is incorrect. It's December 15th through January 12th, so we need to correct that. But there will be a 30-day opportunity for folks to dive into that. Again, it's meant to be just the basic policies and procedures, not including things like eligible costs, policy priorities. Those are the things that are created each year in a grant policy. So I'm happy to open it up to questions from the commission.
Thank you, Director. Questions?
So just for clarification, with the no contact, so it's specifically related to the current round of funding is no contact. So if they have concerns about something else, Barnes Fund related, we can still, or they can still talk to us.
Correct. It is strictly related to the application process, application itself.
Okay.
So we're asking the commission to vote on your approval for us to release these for public comment.
Does that make sense to everyone? Then though after public comment has happened, we'll come back and then any tweaks, we can adopt those and have the final vote at that time.
Yes, we'll submit a red line version to the commission so you can see where we've made any changes. We will also have a summary of the comments received in writing so that you can see what has been incorporated and where we haven't, especially if there's a lot of the same. There will be an explanation on why.
And if any commissioners have questions that they come up with after today's meeting, they would follow the same process as folks in the audience to get those questions?
Yes, they can submit the questions to us or their comments through the email, or they can call. The commission can call us. You're our oversight body.
All right. Further questions or comments? All right. We appreciate you and your staff putting this together. Seeing no other comments, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve.
All right. Deborah makes a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Councilor Allen. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Next up is the draft policies and scoring matrices for public comment. Would you like to go through these one at a time? Would that make it easier, or?
If I could run through my presentation and then, because I've kind of aggregated the information to save us some time and headache trying to navigate them. So the first slide here is the total allocation information. When we prepared the materials that you had, we had not yet had full confirmation from Metro Finance. I got it about 30 minutes ago. It's around, again, $19,282, pretty much what we have in our budget documents that you received. Based on, let me stop for a minute. Any point as we go through these, what we're looking for from the commission are a few things. Is that if there's anything related to any item we're presenting on that you want changed and you vote on, like the cap amount, any of that, whether you want to go back to a full pool, we are presenting as 3 separate funding pools, and I'll explain in a minute. That's what we're looking for from you, is that final guidance to incorporate. So this is presented. When we left the work session, there was consensus around a maximum award of $3.5 million given the smaller funding pool. So that's what we did. The maximum amount for small organizations set aside went back down to $750,000. That's what's been in typical smaller pots of money. The RFA overview is set to, this is the 4th scenario that we presented at the work session with the rental and co-op. And yes, we have included limited equity cooperatives in rental housing. That was clear from the discussion. Based on how the evaluations fall out, that made more sense. Home ownership is traditional home ownership and shared equity housing, but not limited equity cooperatives. And then the owner-occupied rehab speaks for itself. So this is the 4th scenario. You can see they have different maximum points available, and that is the incorporation of the Unified Housing Strategy priorities. We are looking at and scaling things differently, and some of the things that we are looking for in strong rental projects are just not applicable to owner-occupied rehab. Same with home ownership. And we'll talk through, we got some great feedback that we did consider, and we are looking at only doing bonus points in rental for permanent supportive housing. So this is why we are presenting this as 3 separate funding tracks. And yes, it obviously with the owner-occupied rehab being at $1.9 million, there is that's less than the maximum award available, but that's guidance that we're looking at you on. The small work set aside is 20% of each of those funding criteria or those funding paths. So I'll pause there if there's any discussion here before we start diving into the contents of these policies in the scoring matrix. Nope. Okay. Next slide, Catherine. Oh, we'll share this, but we will also be posting all of this. Yeah. So one of the first things in the draft policies of the grants or the request for applications is a summary, again, of the Unified Housing Strategy's priorities for Metro-supported programs, as well as barn-specific recommendations. These are around long-term affordability, encouraging deeply affordable housing, creating housing for special populations, tenant protections, and then advancing home ownership. Barn-specific recommendations were being strategic and efficient on maximizing resources, aligning the Barnes Fund with unified housing strategy priorities, creating separate funding tracks, and to strengthen public benefit terms. So these are in each of the RFAs. So I'm going to go through some of the things that are consistent across all three. Next slide. These are the threshold criteria, and I know this is small on your screen. A lot of this is not new. But as many of you know, we have gone through an Office of Financial Accountability review, and we are making sure that we are strengthening our requirements through Metro has a nonprofit grants manual. Nonprofits are required to be familiar with this. I don't know that we have been strong about making that information known, but we are now. So the things that are highlighted are new. One is the Tennessee Secretary of State's Office of Charitable Solicitations requirement of registration. The other one is for the chair of the board of the nonprofit to certify that they have read and understand the nonprofit's grants management manual. Then the other one is this was an evaluation factor. We've been talking about the audit requirement for a really long time. It is now a threshold criteria. That was what was voted on. We've had some questions around what size organizations really need to do this audit. And Metro's requirement, and I know it's confusing because there's single audit requirements if you get federal money. Then there's audit requirements on how big your organization is. Metro's audit requirements are if you get more than $50,000 in Metro money, you have to do the audit. It doesn't matter if you have to do a single audit otherwise, or if you have to do a regular audit because of the size of your organization. We've never had an application for less than $50,000, so this is why we're requiring an audit. If we get an application for less than that, then we can look at, I would hope those applicants would ask that question in the comment period so we can adjust and make that flexibility in the threshold. The other piece of the threshold is about outstanding legal claims, fair housing complaints, or complaints related to wage payments. We changed safety violations to OSHA violations. The intent here is to making sure that we are partnering with good partners that are paying their contractors and aren't creating unsafe conditions during the development process, but also aren't going to be embroiled in deep legal claims. And then the last piece, we have another one that's not new about the developer fee max. The site control demonstration, this has been a threshold for the past few times, is a deed in hand, a sales contract or option contract, or a ground lease for a minimum of 30 years. But for anyone recommending or proposing an affordability term longer than 30 years, it needs to be consistent with the affordability term. This does not apply to owner-occupied rehab projects, so this doesn't appear in their grant policies. I will pause here around any discussion or questions for threshold criteria. Okay, we will move on. We also have in the grant policies definitions and listing for eligible projects and eligible costs. We clearly explain that an eligible project is a new building or new home, and it can be in a phased project. For example, if there's a subdivision that's had Barnes Funds awards before, it can be in phase 2. These new projects can be in phase 2. They just can't be in a phase that's received previous funding, in a building that's received previous funding, or a home that has received any previous funding. So we're not looking at any net new units. This is the departure from round 15. These are new buildings and homes. The next are around eligible cost. Again, we define these more clearly. We are looking for, especially inviting the comments in on if something is not clear. We've changed the term pre-development cost to soft cost and better clarify what those are. New consideration is requiring grantees to use 30% of their construction costs for the grant award. We're seeing more and more requests to use grant funds on the very, very front end of a deal in the pre-development acquisition. And our contracts essentially end with when the grant funds are expended. So we want to make sure that we have still Barnes Fund skin in the game all the way through that construction period. Developer fees are for the rehab cases, administrative fees, and then a limited amount of home buyer subsidy available for home ownership projects only. So these are, we think, clearer in the grant policies, but we would welcome that feedback on if there's anything that needs additional clarification. Any questions or discussions here? Okay. Next are, these are the general project requirements. You'll see, I'm lifting these out. I'm pretty much going through how the grant policies are organized to have the interested applicants recognize the important things that are in these grant policies that we want them to be familiar with, because these are the things that they're going to be accountable for. The first is nonprofit status. A nonprofit has to be the owner or still 51% control in the deal throughout the affordable housing, throughout the affordability term. We often get questions during the application period or before, where a for-profit does want to partner with a nonprofit, then take them out at some point after the grant. And the requirement is that a nonprofit has to stay in that 51% control or ownership of the deal. If that transfers, the commission must vote on whether it's transferring to a qualified nonprofit, meeting the same criteria as you would have voted on in the application. The affordability requirements, of course, for anything but owner-occupied rehab, that's a minimum of 30 years. We lay out, depending on if it's rental or home ownership, the additional requirements such as maximum purchase price or max rents. A change that is new to the home ownership is adopting MDHA's maximum purchase price for homes. That's been an iffy thing. I think the Barnes practices before have actually deflated or lowered that max purchase price available, and so we're going with MDHA's. That's consistent with the city's consolidated plan, as well as not creating conflict with projects that also have home funds in them. And same with affordability requirements is on rents or around the LIHTC rents, and not allowing income averaging of Barnes units so that we can truly serve households at 62% or below. Again, there's a clarification on how income should be determined and when it should be determined and how often for the various types of projects. Property standards, expectations. We have general project requirements that apply across the board. Then each of the grant policies have very specific project requirements that are around the expectations. Rentals is different than homeownership, different than rehab. So we just want to make sure everyone recognizes there are some important things that when you apply for a grant, the expectation is you've read what these requirements are, and these will be incorporated into the contract, and these are not negotiable. Okay, next slide. Okay, we're going to start with essentially how the evaluation criteria is set up. And commissioners, if you have taken the time to dive through everything and reconciled points, you'll see that I didn't add up some things correctly. So these have been revised. This screen is the accurate screen for all the points, and these will be updated. I've already redlined the version, and you'll get those copies. That'll go out on Monday. So the first section is housing security, and this is a breakdown very similar to what we reviewed. There are evaluation criteria that we don't have the horizontal scoring matrix of historical. It's vertical, but it's very clear in there how many points you get. For example, in income target, if 5% of your units are targeted to 30% or below AMI, you get X number of points, and so on and so forth, up to the maximum of 8. And that income target is consistent across all three. The affordability term is not applicable to the owner-occupied rehab. They have a maximum lien schedule, and that really isn't feasible to impose anything stricter in owner-occupied rehab. Special populations, you'll see that we started to diverge from the points for owner-occupied rehab than we do with rental. And that's because when for home ownership, they are subject to qualifying for a mortgage. And as some folks commented during the work session, that's very hard to do and overcome, same with their housing access criteria. Again, special populations can be large families, persons with disabilities, as well as persons experience homelessness. We had the list fully laid out in the grants manual. Same, next with affirmative marketing, same requirements for homeownership and rental and co-op. We do not require fair housing and affirmative marketing for owner-occupied rehab, but we have modified that language around their outreach and marketing practices that they'll have to describe. And then housing access criteria. This is the qualifying and being determined if the rent or to lease an apartment building is very different than qualifying for a mortgage, very different than being a homeowner. So the criteria among all three of these is different and weighted differently. We are looking to advance, you're seeing the reflection of UHS policy priorities in how these are scaled. The housing access criteria and the anti-displacement policies are getting to that housing security, which our rental population is much more vulnerable than the other two populations. And these look different on what we are asking each of the different project types to demonstrate. So that's the housing security scenario. We didn't lay out all the different things, and we don't include, and we're not publishing the actual application questions, and so that folks can start filling in. But this gives the folks a good idea of how their projects they're thinking of could shake out. So I'll pause here if there's any questions or discussion.
Any questions? All right, Anton?
The more I think about it, I'm starting to get a little worried about actually implementing the special populations. So, like, for example, the project Eddie just talked about was policemen and firefighters, and that would score lower than that would score lower under our current, or if we went forward this path with special populations. And also, like, there's projects like Bloom that did expectant mothers, and that's not, or I didn't see that in the list of special populations. So I'm just wondering, like, how do we enforce, like, what is a special population, especially with something like home ownership? Like, their status in the special population might change, and I'm a little worried we might have, like, weird cases, like, where we're prioritizing something for justice impacted persons over, say, like, police, which could be a PR problem.
So we recognize in the RFA that homeownership is different. And again, a special population that's considered in that homeownership can advance is housing for larger families, which is 3+ bedrooms. I mean, that's getting to families that are having to move out of the county because we don't have housing for families. The UHS was very clear on the types of populations that do not that have the least access to housing, the highest barriers to housing. Those are usually advanced through rental opportunities, through organizations that focus on that. The Bloom, it's a single parent household in the Bloom target, which would qualify under that special population. But that's what we're trying to address. It doesn't mean that a project wouldn't be funded. It just means that they're scored appropriately. But if someone is proposing high special populations but otherwise has a weak application, then they would not be able to. We've balanced the scoring to look at all of those different factors, and you can see the highest scoring area is actually the underwriting criteria. But at the end of the day, with two strong projects, the UHS is advancing that we need to create housing for the people that have had housing barriers and have not been able to find housing or don't have housing choice. Everyone in every pretty much economic scale of mid to low income has a difficulty finding housing that they can afford, and we can't, with this funding, serve everyone. So we do need to figure out if we want to prioritize the special populations or not.
So specifically for like implementation, so say Bloom, for example, they say it's for single mothers and say it was for expectant mothers, and there's debate on whether expectant mother is a single mother. Like, so is it staff who justifies that? Like, I'm wondering, how do we enforce that it's really a special population, and like where the burden would lie?
So they would need to demonstrate in the application which of those populations they're serving and how they're going to do outreach and marketing. And it's not a high threshold either. We're not asking for 100%. We're asking, I believe the thresholds we're looking at are 5%, up to 20%, and the thresholds from 1 to 6 points in rental, 4 points in home ownership, and 4 points. And it's more of how are they intending to target, and they tell us how they would lease or sell to these populations. And again, it doesn't have to be to all of them. It's one of any of the listed ones.
Okay.
Any other questions from the commission at this point?
Oh,
All right.
yeah.
Yep.
So I understand the breakdown between the three tiers is based on need, but if we are faced with applications that are really strong in an area that we only have a small number of points for, and really weak in an area that we've said we wanted a lot of, is it in the best interest of meeting our goals to go ahead and award weaker applicants simply because they're in something that we designated, or is there a way to build in some flexibility to adjust if we see something?
Ultimately, it's our responsibility as staff and yours as the commission to be the best stewards of the fund. And that is, there's policy priorities and populations to serve. On the other side of that coin are strong projects to fund that are financially viable, because if they can't be developed or developed well, then are we investing the dollars? So these points are structured to balance both of those, to where a project that doesn't seem financially feasible wouldn't override something that was really strong in a policy priority, and vice versa. And that's the purpose of the evaluations and the evaluation committee in scoring these.
Okay, so if I understand that correctly, so if we have someone who scores, for example, a 30 in the rental and co-op, but we've already used all the money in the homeownership RFA.
Oh, I'm sorry. You were asking what happens if we run out of money.
If we max out in one, but we have someone left who's just really weak, but we still have money left in that category, would we have minimum flexibility?
We have minimum funding requirements, first of all, minimum score requirements to be considered for funding.
Gotcha.
That keeps not well scoring projects from being considered, is one quality control.
Excellent.
If one of the three buckets is undersubscribed, the commission has the flexibility to award the balance of funds to an oversubscribed funding lane, and depending on how many is oversubscribed and what the recommendations are at that point. And we haven't clarified that policy, but I feel like it should be, and we can put this in writing in both the application manual and in the grant manual. At that point, it's based on the highest scoring, but again, it's still not apples to apples in those two, so it would just really be an analysis of where are the strongest applications from there.
Great, that seems important. Okay, thank you.
Anything else at this point? Thank you for those explanations.
Okay, next area is around project approach. This is considering several different things. The first is location and access. You can see that home ownership and rental and co-op, because they can have the flexibility more to choose where. I know a lot of it's driven by land cost. Feedback we got was around the walk score. We have a range of point options and availability, whether considering the proximity to transit, an all-access corridor and or the walk score in there, so that organizations can qualify meeting various different things. For the rehab, it's more of a plan to target homes in our high displacement risk areas. We have the map printed in the grant policy manual that they can look at, and we can send a larger one. Neighborhood and community benefits. The point difference between rental and homeownership is we took having commercial space. There's no evaluation factor for a homeownership project. Most of ours historically have been single family homeownership, so that would not be applicable. With the rental and co-op, we did remove anything related to daycare, childcare that we had in there before. Again, with the way owner-occupied rehab functions, having that just really isn't applicable evaluation criteria. Design quality is around the universal design checklist for rental and homeownership. We do have more points in the rehab section. There's not a base requirement around the choosing things from the checklist for either design quality or sustainability and resilience. For rehab, it's more of tell us how you would do it if you had a scope of work. But with rehab, it's also we want to know their plan if they come across a home that may have lead-based paint or asbestos or some other hazardous material, how they would involve the homeowner in the scope of work, things like that. So that's where we've heard back and incorporated the feedback from the rehab folks that spoke. So that's really the project criteria and approach. Any questions or discussions there? Okay.
Okay, so I know you said it's a little different with owner-occupied rehab. So the checklist, I don't know how many points that we're actually looking for. So is it kind of like a breakdown, like part A is like the checklist, how many are they fulfilling, like the other categories, and then part 2 is like how you're going to attack, like when you were saying like asbestos.
Oh, for the rehab, we don't require the checklist
for the design quality.
For the design quality, we do ask them to give us a plan. Like for example, rental and homeownership, they've got a minimum select 10, and then their points are based on how many more above that they implement. Okay. Rehab, because you don't know the scope of work in a home until you go visit it. It's more of, if you visit, give us a general plan. If you visit a home where you may be replacing appliances, tell us then how you would incorporate measures from a sustainability and resiliency checklist. If your scope of work requires something that you would need to do one of these things, tell us what your plan would be, because we can't really require them to tell us something they don't know yet, but they need to be thinking about how they would further the city's policies if they didn't have that opportunity.
Okay, you answered my question.
Yeah.
I was saying, do they still have to
Yeah.
do the 12?
Yeah.
But you said no.
No, correct. Any other discussion? All right. Last section is around the underwriting criteria. Next slide. And we've bucketed things that have appeared throughout applications into the underwriting criteria. This is a typical industry practice. The developer qualifications is the same for everyone. We're looking for a team with the lead applicant, particularly with experience in a range of years, and the maximum points for that is 10. Project readiness is different on the rental and homeownership than it is on owner-occupied rehab, even though they're scored the same. Oh, I'm sorry, they're not. Rental and homeownership is much higher because we're looking for a lot of different things out of the project readiness. This isn't just about whether you have all the funding. That's one piece. It's about the due diligence at the site. Have they done, we're scoring on whether something has been evaluated for any potential environmental constraints, utility needs, zoning. So there's a whole range of different things that can affect how ready a project can be developed and be available for occupancy, and that's what we're looking for in that project readiness piece for the rental and homeownership. And then with owner-occupied rehab, it's more about their timelines and their understanding of the building codes processes. So then financial capacity, pretty close to the same thing. We elevated operating expenses an extra point in the financial capacity for owner-occupied rehab because that's structured a little differently on how those organizations can benefit from either the income from a rental project or from the sale of a home ownership. And then finally, the funding need. We heard a lot of comments on this one the most around that per unit or per unit cap based on bedroom sizes. And the robust conversation at the last work session was around looking at the efficiencies. So this is more a points assigned to the percent of the per unit cost the Barnes Fund is going to meet. And that's where that efficiency piece comes in. So it ranges anywhere from 50% of the per unit by bedroom size. So if your 1 bedrooms are $250,000 and your 3 bedrooms are $300,000, I'm just talking, I have no data in front of me. But again, you will be evaluated on the per unit cost and the percent of Barnes based on that bedroom size, not just for the unit in general. So we can see those efficiencies, but we have not set a cap on the per unit piece. And then finally, the evaluation criteria, as I mentioned, the only bonus points we have is around permanent supportive housing with a max of 8 points. And this all shakes out to the max points for rental and co-op housing at 165, home ownership at 138, and owner-occupied rehab at 100. I think I had an older, a previous screen, I didn't add it here, about the minimum amounts, and those change based on how high the points go. So the minimum amount to be considered for a funding award for rental and co-op is higher than it would be for owner-occupied rehab because that's a lower max score. And those are all in the grant policies as well. And they average around 70% of the total availability, which is like a, C or D in a grade. So that's been a consistent kind of process and policy that's been around in the Barnes Fund. So that's it for the evaluation criteria, not for my presentation though, but I'll pause here on the underwriting criteria. So, yeah, go ahead, Chair.
Just going to ask the commission if there's any reflections, feedback that hasn't been stated yet. Yeah, Gayla.
So I just want to thank you. I was a part of the last grading round, and I really think that you guys definitely took it to another level, and you guys listened, and I think this is going to be a great round.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, well, we'll move on to the next slide, Catherine. More things are still in the grant policies. So we still have some new things to go over. So the grant policies, again, carry over some of the application manual information, including the prohibition on communication. The submittal format, we are not going to use SurveyMonkey Apply. Everybody clap, raise your hand, spirit fingers. We are still working out the right platform. We don't have the time yet to do our full-on grants management changeover that we're looking to do, but we're looking at other metro departments and MDHAs on a contract we can buy off of for this round. That might impact the actual release date on how quickly we can do that, but I feel like the trade-off is getting a better application portal than meeting that. We're going to try to meet that February 9th date as close as possible. We will have a technical assistance meeting on using the portal because this is a new process for us and everyone else, and we want to make sure to make ourselves available to provide technical assistance, walk people through. This will be separate from information sessions that will be held on the actual on the actual applications once they're open. The next is the question period. Each grant policy will have a period when we will accept questions on the application. These dates are not going to be in the versions released on the website because, again, it's all based on when we will have that portal ready to go. But during this question period is when applicants can communicate in writing only to staff only, outside of the designated information sessions that we will host for each application, where there would be an opportunity for verbal questions. We will take all the questions and comments submitted during that question period, formulate responses. Those written responses will go out to everyone who's been on those meetings, submitted requests, and posted on our website. And we will make sure that's done, I believe, I said either 10 or 14 days before the grant window closes. One thing actually, it's back to the application manual. I can't remember if it's here. There have been instances where we've come up on whether or not to extend a funding round, and that requires commission approval. So we are at the final vote next month asking for staff to be able to extend the grant period if an issue is related to the technology. If we're having issues, a lot of folks are having issues there, or we are, or a natural disaster that could just upend everything during this window if we can't make it back to the commission for approval. But for other reasons, we would want the commission approval. So that will come back before you next month. New is a cure period that took me a minute to warm up to, but I get it. This isn't meant for people to submit substandard or incomplete applications, but there's a lot of work that goes in, and it gets tricky. And we're going to be using a new portal, so we want to give a short period of time that if we are reviewing an application that we need clarification or something is missing, that we give applicants a period of time to respond. So we felt that was very important. That was a consistent feedback we got across all grantees. The award process is typical. We'll bring recommendations back to the commission. Then we'll immediately start the contracting process once the commission, Metro Legal and the commission approves the contract template. Contract templates are really the only negotiable items are if there's any tweaks or clarifications in the scope, but really Metro requirements are Metro requirements. Council approval is the final determination for a contract, and then if anyone is not funded, we will invite them in to sit down for an application review, and then at the beginning of every meeting, and it's in the grant policy, is the how to appeal a commission decision. On the post-award, we will host a mandatory grantee meeting. This will be required before any grantee can make a draw. So we hosted one with everyone together, which makes things very efficient. But if someone can't make it, you will be required to schedule a meeting with the team for that. The rest of everything shouldn't be a surprise. Then a new thing in the application is a checklist. Also, there's lots of required uploads and things. Make sure you go through it. And then we will host, as I mentioned, a technical assistance session on using the new platform. Okay, next slide. Any comments or questions there? Okay. So beginning Monday, December 15th, because we've got to have time to get things uploaded to our website and some corrections, editorial corrections made of some things before we publish. We will make all 3 grant policies and scoring matrices available on the Barnes Fund website. They'll be open for public comment through January 12th. We will have a virtual opportunity for anyone interested in the owner-occupied rehab RFA on January 5th at 1:30. The homeownership opportunity is January 6th at 1:30, and then the virtual comment opportunity for rental and co-ops is January 7th at 10:30 a.m. You can submit your comments in writing at barnesfund@nashville.com. We'll, again, also take them during these virtual opportunities. This is You can register for the virtual meetings at our Barnes Fund. On our Barnes Fund page, those links will also be up. Catherine will email everyone out on Monday, too, with information so everybody knows when to go. Start looking so you're not like at 8 a.m. Is it up? Is it up? We'll make sure y'all know. This is not the prohibition period. This is comments on the drafts. This is not the open application, so the prohibition on communication does not apply during this comment period. Just want to be clear about that. Next slide. Oh, so we're done. Items for vote, at least, if you'll. So what we're asking for the commission first, if there's anything that jumped out at you that you would like us to change in any of the items we discussed, and if so, we will make that change before we publish on Monday, and then we are looking for your approval to allow us to release each of these. I guess I'm going to look at legal. Can they consider all 3 policies together in one vote, or do they need to do a separate vote for all 3 draft policies?
I think it's fine to do one vote, but it's up if you all want to do 3. I think that's fine as well.
Okay. So, Chair, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you, Angie. So appreciate all the work that staff has put in to put all this together. I would ask that commissioners, before we take this up to vote, based on legal's statement that we can take this in one vote, I'm inclined to do that unless there's a specific area where a commissioner has something they want to discuss. And if that were the case, then maybe we take that one up separately. But absent that, I'll once again open it up for any comments or discussion. And if there is none, then I'll go ahead and ask for a motion to approve. So is there any further discussion or questions? Council Lady.
Thank you. Just to review, there will be an opportunity to look at a red line version based on all the comments that have come in before the final approval. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And so our vote today is to release this on the 15th for further comment. All right, any further questions, comments, statements? All right, I will ask for a motion to approve the 3 of these, the rental and co-op projects, the home ownership projects, and the owner-occupied rehab projects. Is there a motion? So we have I'm sorry, I didn't catch the first one.
Jayla and Berkeley.
Jayla, okay, a motion by Jayla and second by Council Lady. All those in favor?
Aye.
All the opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. And that gets us through all of our items for vote. Next up on the agenda are items for discussion. The first of these is the quarterly progress report. Pass it back over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. In October, you received the quarterly progress report, but it wasn't on the agenda, so open to any questions or discussion by the commission. So if you have any questions now, this is an opportunity to have that discussion or ask your questions.
And for the commission, this was included in your packets. Hopefully you had a chance to review these. And I think I've said this before, but I'll say it again, that I do appreciate these quarterly reports. I think they're a good way to share a lot of information on how each round has proceeded. So I appreciate the work that staff has done to continue putting these together. Seeing no comments, this is not an item to vote. Next up is the Metro payment system change.
Yes, I think I mentioned this earlier when I was talking about the draws that Catherine's processing. Metro is switching our payment processing to a cloud-based Oracle system, and Metro Finance, I believe the deadline has already passed for the grantees to get their draw requests through December to us so they can be processed before the cutoff date, before the new effective date of the new system is January 1. And so Metro is shutting down when they're going to stop receiving things in our current system so they can make that changeover. And we just wanted to make sure any grantees that haven't read their emails from Catherine are aware that after now we cannot, anything we receive after now likely will not be processed before the new system is live in January.
Thank you for that update. All right. Any questions, comments from the commission on that one? Next up is the audit requirements for contract amendments.
Thank you. So we know that there's an audit requirement with your application and to go under contract for your grant award, but every nonprofits must maintain good status with the active status with the Secretary of State, and also do their audits, perform their audits accordingly every year, and preferably place those on GuideStar. Or Giving Matters, sorry. Giving Matters, what is GuideStar? I don't know. I'm just going to make stuff up. No, I'm kidding. Giving Matters, but also if we don't have it on file, we will ask you for it. We likely won't have it on file if it's not within the year of your original application. So don't be surprised when you submit a contract amendment. We have a lot of contracts that will be expiring in early spring that are starting to submit contract extensions. So please, we will look to see what we have on file. If you were around 15 applicant or grantee, we may already have it. But just be aware that those now, Metro Finance checks Giving Matters for your current audits, and if they don't have it, they're going to ask us for it. But we would rather just proactively have it on file before we move it forward, because we don't want to move anything forward for filing if the audit has not been done, or the nonprofit has lost their active status or at risk of losing it with the Secretary of State. That has also happened.
All right, thank you for that. Next, are any questions or comments from commission members?
I have one not really related to this. It's against special populations, but I didn't think it was pertinent to the draft, but whenever you think would be the right time to bring it up.
You have a statement or you have a question?
Or more of a question. Okay, maybe it is a statement. I'm trying to would like to hear other people's feedback on specifically, like just how special populations are defined and designated. I'm wondering if we should have a step where we vote on agreeing with the mayor's determination of these constitute a special population. Because if we're not the ones setting who the special population is, to me it seems like it opens an avenue. I'd just like that to be really clearly specified that we'd still have control over. Not that I would disagree with any of them, but I'm just wondering, it seems like it's like a backdoor for...
We're getting a little bit out of order in terms of the content on the agenda. I'm reluctant to move into a discussion, but as we are approaching the announcements, which has a little more flexibility, perhaps.
We could bring it up next time.
Would this be something, staff, that we would...
I will clarify. This isn't anything the mayor has set out. This is in the Unified Housing Strategy that the division prepared with deep data analyses and deep research around who is not getting access to housing that's been created, especially through public funds, and how to better create access for populations who consistently face housing barriers. And that is an independent, agnostic data and analysis that came out. And the recommendations that were included was to implement across Metro programs priorities or incentives to create or open up more housing access for populations that are least likely to get housing access. Ultimately, the commission it's in your purview to vote on how you want to see those things, the UHS recommendations affected in the funding awards and grant policies. it's certainly within that. But I did want to clarify that this was based on data in the Unified Housing Strategy and not a policy position from any member of staff or the administration.
Thank you for that clarification. I would suggest if there's further discussion or that we have on that, to present that for discussion either at our next commission meeting or to bring that to one of the, or submit it to staff for inclusion in one of the informational sessions.
Yep, I'll do that.
And for other commissioners who have questions about those, I think that staff has provided, at least to me, a good basis for where they came from that with the UHS, and so that might be a good thing for us to review as well to confirm that that's where we want things to.
Chair, may I ask a question of legal?
Sure.
Council, if more than one commissioner wanted to join one of these public meetings that we're hosting, since we are advertising, these are made available, the information is made available on our website and how to register. Would we need to advertise in any other way in case we had more than one commissioner want to join one of those comment sessions?
If they're publicly noticed already, then that should be fine.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Didn't have to draw straws up here for figure out who could join those. All right, we are now into the announcements period. As some of you may have seen, if you had your binoculars on, the dates for the upcoming round 16 grant policies and scoring matrices. I'll read these aloud just in case you didn't get those, but those will be available on the Barnes website on the 15th, so we encourage you to go see that. But just to read it out there is that the owner-occupied rehab projects, that public comment meeting, virtual meeting, will be held on January 5th at 1:30. The home ownership projects public comment meeting will be on January 6th at 1:30. And the rental and co-op project will be on January 7th at 10:30. And if anyone has any questions about that, feel free to ask a member of staff afterwards, and we'll make sure you have that so you have the right time and date for everything.
Yeah, the next slide has that on there. There we go.
All right, and then the final item on the announcements, I'll turn it back over to staff.
Yes, we're excited to announce we'll have a new team member joining us before we convene again. She starts actually Monday. Her name's Jamie Pennington. She comes from the Habitat for Humanity from Wake County, North Carolina, and has some great housing background. So if any of you or any of our grantees get an email from Jamie, we wanted to let you know it's not a spam email. It is actually coming from the housing division. So we're very excited to fill the position that was vacated when Rashida left back in March. So it's taken a while, but we're welcoming her on Monday.
Great. Look forward to working with the new staff. All right. Any other announcements from commission members? All right, seeing none, I appreciate everyone's time today. Once again, I want to say a big thank you to staff of the Inglewood Library for hosting us today, as well as staff of Metro ITS for making the trip to be here. And with that, we will go ahead and at 3:16, we will adjourn.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.